The one is coming from a frame of a therapist who's worked with everybody, meaning I work with the person who's been bullied, I work with the person bullying. Like when you're a therapist, you do work with everyone. And I think, and we're all flawed human beings. We all make mistakes. If you live long enough, you're going to do things that hurt people and maybe not intentionally. But the frame I'd want you to hold is no one who is happy and doing well in their life goes into comment sections and tears people down.
Welcome to the Influencer Income Show, the only show on social media where you learn to become an influencer by hearing from those that are at the top of their game. I'm your host, Danny Dobrzenski, known around the internet as Cooking in the Yard, and I'm really excited about our show today. We have Justin from A Modern Therapist with us to talk about healthy relationships with social media and dealing with everything that social media has to offer from an off-screen content perspective. Justin, so great to have you with us today. Thank you so much for joining.
Yo, Danny, great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So let's go ahead and kick off the show. I know we've got a lot to cover and a lot of great advice and things to talk about. So why don't you just go ahead and tell us about yourself? If you could hit on your life on social media and off, if possible.
Yeah, so I'm a licensed psychologist living down here in South Florida. I have my own private practice that I share with my partner, who's also a psychologist. So we drive each other absolutely nuts, which is obvious. I mainly work with teens and young adults, depression, anxiety, trauma, but I also create a lot of content for social media, talking about all things mental health, with my main aim on social media is just to reduce stigma and provide information surrounding mental health.
Excellent. And you are an influencer in your own right. Can you talk to us about your accounts and your follower accounts and what your social media journey has been like thus far?
Yeah, it's definitely been a journey with lots of ups and downs. But yeah, I started right before the pandemic with the only goal of sharing some of this knowledge I've been so privileged to have. I knew I was going to be starting a private practice and I wanted to kind of just offer some general mental health information. And for a while, I was like, why not just post some of this to YouTube? And I had a friend who actually told me, it's like, hey, you should try out this TikTok app. And I was like, man, I'm not that good of a dancer. Like, I don't think that's going to work out for me. And this was literally a few months before the pandemic started. And I posted a few videos there and they really took off. And since then on TikTok and Instagram, I've gotten a pretty good following of people who are interested in mental health, many of which suffer from mental health difficulties that are ongoing. A lot of mental health professionals follow me as well. And it's been interesting because I started out providing information about mental health, and then it started, kind of moving to me talking about my own mental health as a mental health professional, as a human being that, we're all going to go through ups and downs with our mental health. We never perfect it. It doesn't matter what degree you have by your name. And so it's been a journey of like information to authenticity. And now I do a lot of things involving humor because I think that's something sort of lacking in the mental health space. Mental health is really serious, but at the same time, if you've ever been in therapy, therapy brings all the emotion. It's serious sometimes, you're laughing the next. So I'm just trying to represent what therapy and mental health really looks like.
That's fantastic. And it's really, really needed. And one of the reasons in particular that I was so excited to have you on the show is the conversations with influencers in previous episodes usually leads down a path to mental health in one form or another. Anyone listening to this who is on social media or spends a fair amount of time on there knows the ups and the downs, the swings of emotions are just absolutely wild sometimes. And as an influencer, as a content creator, you never put out content, or you never want to put out content that's not going to do well. Myself on Cooking in the Yard, every time I create a piece of content, I'm hoping that it's going to get, 1 million or 10 million views on it, right? To do all the things to grow the business. And oftentimes that's not the case for something that's in no control of our own. And going back to previous episodes, what comes up often is, wow, that can really affect me, or that can impact me in not only my confidence in doing the job that I do, but am I providing for my family? Am I advancing my career? Am I growing that way? And that's one of the reasons why I was so excited to have you here, is to talk about the mental health aspect of being on social media. And I guess the first question that I would ask you is, when you think about social media overall as a whole, from your professional and clinical backgrounds, what does social media mean to you, in the specifically from the standpoint of the clients that you see? Is there overlap? Is there intersection of mental health issues that are either stemming from or being fueled by social media at this point?
Yeah, it's a great question that I get asked a lot. I think the truth of it is the data's mixed. Like when we turn to the research, for some clients, I see social media is incredibly problematic. One of the things we know through the research is that social media can be absolutely terrible for sleep and sleep hygiene. And what people don't realize is sleep is the one thing all of us do or should be doing every single day to reset our mental health. And our sleep hygiene has been poor probably since, having televisions in our
Right.
room, and we could have a whole episode just talking about sleep hygiene. But to steer away from that, social media has just become so much a part of our everyday world. And I think that's important to accept, is that when I work with Gen Z and people who are teenagers, this is how they're making friends, through Snapchat. This is how they're linking up with people from other schools. I used to go hang out with the mall, in the
Yeah.
90s, or the movie theater, and just hang out hoping to meet people from other towns. That's not happening anymore. You first meet with them through Snapchat and exchange a few messages. So social media is not going to go anywhere. And I know there can be generational differences where people who are baby boomers might not quite understand the social media world. Maybe they're not on it. Maybe they're only on Facebook Marketplace trying to sell that used sofa for 500. No one wants your used sofa for $500. I'm sorry to tell you.
But it's so comfortable. It's got years of butt prints in it. It just fits so well.
It's broken in, right? No one's going to give you $500, but not to go down that rabbit hole too far. But I hear that a lot, of like, from older generations, like social media is so bad. It's not all bad, and the research sort of backs that up. However, for content creators specifically, it's important to recognize that these apps are designed to keep you on. They are constant dopamine reinforcing hits, which is why when we get another comment, we get another like, we get all these shares, I know we're going to get into tips, but having notifications off is so important. But I know I'm like a lot of people that mindlessly, when I have a little break in my day, I'll just find myself, how did I get on Instagram? Like, how did I even get, like, my brain just took me here because it wanted
Mhm.
the quick dopamine hit. And these are some of the areas where, unchecked, of course, it can be problematic and a constant distraction.
Absolutely. And the documentary that came out a couple of years ago about social media, on that note, called out a really interesting point, in that social media users are labeled users in this, in a similar way that somebody that uses drugs may be
Mhm.
labeled as a user. And there's not many industries. The coffee industry doesn't label their customers as coffee users, right? Social media
Mhm.
users, right? And I would like to dig in with you a little bit on, is there an addiction aspect to social media, either from the content creator standpoint or from the consumer, the user perspective, that people need to be aware of and focus on? And how do you integrate that into your day-to-day life while still maintaining healthy relationships, that face-to-face aspect? Just a quick break in the show to say thank you very much for watching this week's episode of the Influencer Income Show. While we're here, please take a second to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and hit the bell to be notified whenever a new show comes out so you don't miss anything. If you're up for it, I'd love to see a comment from you telling me what you think of the show or any questions you've got for your favorite creators. All done? Awesome. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of the show.
Certainly, some people, it crosses the threshold where it's an addiction, where it's impeding upon their daily tasks, meaning they're not getting their other work done, they're having trouble focusing and doing tasks of daily living. Where other people, it can be a distraction, but doesn't meet criteria for addiction, no. So individual differences will always reign when it comes to that conversation. However, for content creators, where it's like, our livelihood is literally built off of us posting, engaging a little bit in the comments, checking on all the things, it can be really difficult. And all of us love the idea of sort of taking a week off from social media. However, that doesn't change the relationship that we have. And where I see specifically content creators having better relationships, they create boundaries for themselves, meaning you post a video. How long are you going to stay in your own comments for? And you hear the variability on this, but I like the idea of like maybe you respond to a few and then you move on.
Mm-hmm.
All of us can stay in our comments all day long, especially if you're getting a lot of them,
Right.
replying to people, liking, giving more feedback. But at some point, you have to pivot to what got you into content creation to begin with. And for most of us, when you're sort of healthy, grounded in a good way, it's you wanted to create and share something with the world. You didn't want to live in a comment section debating people or going back and forth. You wanted to continuously create and share. And that's sort of the mindset that I think gets you out of the app and back into making sort of the next vid, which we could talk about as pressure and stressful, but it sort of pulls you out of the reality that if you are a content creator, you do have to be creating, and just sticking into watching other people. What are other people doing? Doesn't allow you to get into that creative process.
That is some absolutely fantastic advice, and something, a part of that I've learned over the years is that there's a million different variables in social media as to how content performs. Does it do well? Does it not? And a lot of that oftentimes is completely out of our control. Right. And the best way to advance your social media career and your content is just make more content, make better content. And Justin, what you just said to us is you got into content creation because you want to make content, not because you want to fight with people and argue with strangers about things that don't matter in the comments. So stay focused on creating good content and research and understand what the trends are and what your audience wants to see, and just do more of that. And then that's going to help you more than arguing with people that you don't know about something that doesn't really matter in the real world, and is only going to set you back both from a mental health standpoint and also your content, because you're losing time on creating new content. Absolutely fabulous advice. I think for new creators and seasoned creators alike, it's something that's, given all of the things that are actually out of our control as content creators, it's something to stay mindful of and be focused on. So that is an absolute nugget of gold. Thank you very much for sharing that.
Yeah, of course. You said it really well right there. And all of us want to feel a sense of control. And you're right. Like when we feel out of control, that's when we get hopeless and we're like, why, I'm not creating another piece of content because this one performed badly. But you're right. If I've learned anything in this content creation is I have no idea why my videos go viral. I'm just going to put it out there. And I know there's someone out there right now selling you 10 tips, and those 10 tips may be helpful. But I'm just telling you from my perspective, for 5 years of posting almost every day, the videos that go viral for me are never my most liked. They're never the ones I work the hardest on. It's random.
Yep.
So again, and not to diminish the tip thing, but for me, I've come to an acceptance of stay focused on your main thing. And the main thing is putting out mental health content that reduces stigma, and just always move on to the next video.
Right. And what you just hit on is largely the basis for this show. Notice we're not going to talk about which hashtags to use or best time of day to post. It's really focusing on the bigger picture and having good content, but also being in a good mindset and state of mind to be able to want to keep coming back. Oftentimes on the show, we talk about creating content that you're passionate about. Your niche is often determined by really just what you want to do and what you enjoy doing, and being able to do more of that. And I'll ask you this from a clinical standpoint, being able to do more of what you love doing has to be healthier for you than, like you said, arguing with somebody in the comments about this or that or something that doesn't matter. Would you agree with that?
I totally agree. And the thing I remind people is to think about, how many people do you think change their mind within a comment section on social media? It's not to say it never happens,
Right.
but the likelihood is so low. I'm a therapist that sits with people to create change in their life, changing their mindset, their patterns, their behaviors. It takes so much work in one-on-one psychotherapy, the trust, the vulnerability. Do you think you have any of that in a little comment section on Instagram? No, like the odds of it are so slim. Don't waste your energy. And again, there's a time where all of us sort of want to set a boundary or defend ourselves. That's fine. But I just want you to know how hard change is, and that the odds of you doing that again in a few text words on social media is so low. But back to your main point, which is it is about sharing your joy at the end of the day. And the people I see that have been in this for a long time, they over and over again find the joy in creating and sharing with the world. And
Hmm.
sometimes it changes paths slightly. Sometimes it's this new angle or this new series they're working on, but they constantly feel excited. I don't, as much as I love the people that jump in my comments and that, you have a cool, quick few exchanges, it's not the same as going into and creating a video and then sharing it outward. Like that is the process, not, again, back forth in the
Hmm.
comments.
Yeah, and I would also add that the number of emojis that are used, whether good or bad or ugly, probably doesn't work anymore to change people's minds. So that's something else. It's really funny that you say that, and I can tell that you're coming to this with the social media experience as well, because I've oftentimes said that to people in the comments, right? And I'm the person that I fully believe everybody's got their own opinion. Social media is a very public place. If you want people to hear your opinion, that's fine. When it comes to the point of arguing with somebody or personal shots or the oftentimes negativity, for me anyway, that's when it crosses a boundary, and then I may go ahead and block that person or things like that. You mentioned the joy that comes from creating content. For me personally, and I think a lot of our audience would agree, being able to take something from zero, create something, all the hours of blood, sweat, and tears that goes into editing and coming up with the captions and everything, and then putting it out there it's a really great process. And for me personally, again, that's why I try to do it as much as possible. There is a flip side to that coin, though, is what we kind of been alluding to and talking about on the fringe aspect here is the negativity and the toxicity that can come with that as well. And for whatever reason, we won't get into a number of changes that have happened socially over the last decade or so, but where I think a lot of people think that that's okay. And
Mm.
I somebody would never walk up to me in the street and say that to my face, but hey, fair game in the comments section. You put this out there, so let's take shots at you, sort of thing. What advice would you give to both seasoned and new and up and coming content creators on how to deal with that and how not to take that away from that momentary interaction on your phone to take that back to your personal life or your non quote unquote social media life?
Yeah, I have a few different thoughts on this. The one is coming from a frame of a therapist who's worked with everybody, meaning I work with the person who's been bullied, I work with the person bullying. Like when you're a therapist, you do work with everyone. And I think, and we're all flawed human beings. We all make mistakes. If you live long enough, you're going to do things that hurt people and maybe not intentionally. But the frame I'd want you to hold is no one who is happy and doing well in their life goes into comment sections and tears people down. I've never, and again, I go through my lows and all this. I've never woke up one day and thought, you know what I'd love to do? I'm having a great morning over here. I'm gonna go in here and rip someone apart for how they look, their content, this or that. These people are suffering. I promise you. And holding that frame allows you to not get stuck in their stickiness. And for me, it often gives compassion because, again, I have a lot of people following me. They're going through their own mental health difficulties and they'll pick at me for all the things, the way I look, the way I said something, you know, just again, picking you apart, which happens when you post to the whole world. But it's remembering that this person's likely suffering and having a hard time. So you don't have to get in a wrestling match with someone who's already struggling. There's one other thing I'd like to add that really helped change my reference. Marcus Spears, who is a great commentator over on ESPN, was talking one day about social media, and he's sort of advising rookies not to, be wrestling in the comment section. But he was like, the thing I remind myself is 10 seconds ago, I didn't even know you existed in the world. And it was just one of those quotes. I think all our wisdom comes from somewhere. But it was one of those quotes that I'm like, dang, that's so true. And if 10 seconds ago you didn't know this person existed, why are you putting energy into them right now?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a fantastic comment. Marcus Spears, Swagoo. I actually did a brand deal with him a couple of years ago. Super cool guy. But that's absolutely fantastic, feedback and advice. And I think what I would personally add on to that as well is 10 seconds from now, I'm not going to remember that person, I'm not going to be thinking about that person unless I let them. Right. So being able to almost build that callus in a sense in your mind of, okay, I'm not going to let this get to me. I think that's really important for content creators to develop over time, is that you have control over this. There's a lot of things that you don't have control. We talked about it earlier in the episode of, we don't have control over the visibility, the views, the shares, the likes. We have control, and we can control what we can control in this world that's, I'm only going to let somebody get to me for so long, and then I'm going to move on, and I'm going to go about my life and create more content or spend time with my kids or do whatever makes me happy. And I think your comments around, look, we're all flawed, nobody's perfect. I myself have felt that at times where I've had to kind of check myself, and I would never go into somebody's comment section and make comments about, some of the things that you mentioned. But there have been times where people have come at me, and we all have bad days, right? The dog throws up on the carpet, the car breaks down, whatever, and it's just like, okay, this is my moment to make all of that right. And it's something that we have to keep check on as well from a career aspect, because all it takes is one comment to get us blocked, or one person to go on a rampage, and then it could be a career ender. And from the human standpoint, it's one thing as well. But from a social media and a career standpoint, when we're placing all of our chips in the middle of the table and saying, this is the way we're going to go, why would we potentially do something detrimental to cause that to go another way? And I think what you're telling us here is absolutely fantastic. And keeping that right mindset helps a lot. And it's a tremendous way to advance your social media career. With that said, Justin, when people are thinking about negative people, negative comments that are showing up, what advice would you give them on ways to not take that off of social media and back to their real world, quote unquote?
Yeah, staying grounded and asking yourself, does this person hold value in my life? I mean, I think that's a lesson whether on social media or not. Because the reality is, I can be driving to Dunkin' Donuts an hour from now. I need another coffee this morning, if I'm being honest. But I could be driving there an hour from now, and somebody in the car can be ranting and raving because I didn't hit the gas exactly when it turned green. But does this person who's just yelling at me from another car hold any value in my life? No, neither does this person from the internet. Save that for the people who you trust, who you built, years worth of dynamic with. And with that being said, if something hurts you, because we all have things that people can say that I want to normalize that. That's why it's so important to befriend and connect with other creators. Being able to talk to other creators, vent about it, process some of the things. Again, they don't have to be your therapist per se, but that community has been so important for me. Like when I can go to other people and be like, dang, this really hurt me today. And they have your back, and they're like, yo, someone said this to me the other day. It's just that feeling of somebody out there gets it.
Yeah.
And it's okay for a moment, if it gets through the chink in the armor, because we are human. And there's sometimes, I'm with you, there's days where I'm like not in the best headspace and someone says something, but that's when you turn to others for support. We can't do everything alone. And sometimes content creation can feel like you're on an island. And I encourage you, create your community, create your tribe, create your people that you can engage with and talk about the realities of this through. That is like our group therapy.
Yeah. Having that person to vent to, that understands literally from a minute by minute perspective what's going on can be very, very helpful. Outside of social media, for example, I'll talk to my wife about something that happened in my day, and from her standpoint, she provides a very logical response of if this then that. And oftentimes I find myself saying, yeah, but it's not that simple, or it doesn't always go that way, that sort of thing. And having your tribe on social media, your other content creators, has been invaluable for me to have that outlet to vent about in a number of other different ways. Hey, I think I'm getting screwed on this brand deal here. I know you've worked with them before. How did that go? That sort of thing. But the opportunities are endless to improve yourself by having people close to you that understand what you're going through on a day-to-day basis. And I think that's excellent for people to hear. If we change gears here just for a little bit, the concept of mental health, to me, and I'm going to ask you this for your professional opinion, because I'm clearly not a professional and clearly not giving any advice on mental health here. I will leave that to the professionals to do. For me, the dopamine hits, as you mentioned earlier, they come faster, they come harder, they are better when content is doing well. And when the lows happen, the lows seem to go on and on and on and on, and one after the other. And I think some of that may be dictated by the social media platforms themselves. Is Mark Zuckerberg sitting in a button going, sitting at his desk going, oh, Danny's going to have a bad day this week. You get it, right? But, dealing with burnout is something that I hear all the time from creators as I work with and as I talk to content creators that have big aspirations of what their social media career looks like or what they want it to be. And they're under 5,000 followers at this point, but they see people with 1 million. So that's where they want to get. What are some ways that you would give them advice on preventing burnout, sticking to the plan, sticking to the script, and continuing to power through all of the negativity, not only the comments, but videos aren't doing well, all that sort of thing? How would you encourage them to keep coming back if that's something that they really want to do?
Get out of the mindset of fulfilling the algorithm and fulfill yourself. And I can't express that loud enough, especially if you're just starting. And I'll give a super quick example. I have a good size following on TikTok, good size following on Instagram, but I kind of felt the same, like all of us creators did. Like, you kind of stall out, and I'm like, I'm posting every day and I'm thinking of new content, but my energy and battery is low. And I found myself one night just playing video games by myself, and I'm like, why don't I stream this? Why don't I stream me playing the video game and also mix in answering people's questions about mental health? And so a month ago now, I started a Twitch account. I literally, in this exact moment, I have 80 followers. I'm not trying to gloat and brag, but I got 80 followers over on Twitch. I am having the literal time of my life. And some people are like, what? You got all these followers on TikTok. Why aren't you hammering away at that, or Instagram? Because so many things we do as creators is to fulfill ourselves and recharge our own battery. In the last month, I felt more motivated towards my content, the engagement, the community, the ideas, by streaming video games and talking about mental health. And if you would have told me that a year ago, I'd been like, why? Like, what are you doing on Twitch gaming, dude?
Right.
Like, you're almost 40 years old. You talk about mental health 24/7, but sometimes we need to step back. You need to go down another road. And I am almost dumbfounded how recharged I feel being on Twitch, playing games, chatting about mental health. And it doesn't have anything specific to do with the journey I was on and my brand. It's what I needed. And I think you do that in your content. You create different content. You go on a different platform. You do things that make you feel good. And when we just chase the algorithm, we're all going to burn out. I promise you, because the algorithm changes all the time, like you said, that makes zero sense. And all of us just guess as to why. If you do that, again, you lose the control, you burn out.
And I think that's something that once you accept and kind of admit to yourself as a content creator, in that there's really only one person or one group coming out ahead in this entire thing, and that's Meta, that's TikTok, that's, they are, to call it what it is, using content creators to feed the machine, to keep people on there, to bring the users in, to serve them ads, to make money, to boost ad revenue. And they hold all the chips. So doing what you love to do and being happy with that and fulfilling that from a day-to-day basis is a great way to take care of yourself and not worry about completely serving the machine, so to speak, with this, and having more of that control back in your life. And I think that's excellent advice for people to hear, whether you've been doing this for 10 years or whether you're thinking about posting that first video on social media. Justin, at this point, we've talked about a lot. We've covered, the mental health aspect of being on social media, how you keep yourself engaged, how you deal with the negativity and the trolls in the comments. At this point, I'd kind of like to turn the tables just around to you just a little bit. Is there anything that you would like to promote or talk about, or things that you're working on right now that you would love for our audience to hear and know?
I appreciate it so much. Yeah, I really enjoyed the conversation. But yeah, I mean, across social media, I'm a modern therapist. If you want to be the 81st follower over on Twitch, you can find me at Dr. Justin Puder. But I'm also on an awesome podcast that we post every week called Welcome to Group Therapy. It's me and 3 other amazingly smart, intelligent mental health professionals. And we talk about everything mental health under the sun. So that's Welcome to Group Therapy. But yeah, whether I see you in a gaming live, one of my other mental health lives, or in the comments, I would love to engage with you, because we all got mental health. We all go through lows, whether you're a content creator or not, but we have to talk about it. We have to recognize it. And that's the most important part.
Absolutely fantastic advice coming from Justin. You may be the reason why I create my Twitch account. I've been hesitant. I think you may see me on there. You'll see cooking in the yard, keeping everything the same. My same picture with the big yellow background on it, so you won't miss it. But I'll be looking forward to that. You can hear all of this interview on our YouTube channel. You'll be able to see the video stream of that as well. Find the audio podcast on all audio podcasting platforms. You'll be able to find Justin's social links and about him on influencerincomeshow.com. I will have everything linked there. Justin, thank you so much for being with us today. It's been a pleasure. I think what you've been able to share with our audience will be game changers for a lot of people in keeping their mind set in the right direction to be successful on social media. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Danny.
Thank you for tuning into this week's episode of the Influencer Income Show. Head on over to influencerincomeshow.com, where you'll find all the video streams of the interviews that we've done on the YouTube channel right on the website. Also, get the audio podcast on all major streaming platforms. Be sure to like, follow, and subscribe on all the platforms you watch and listen on. It really helps the show, and I would really appreciate it. See you next week.